Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache, from NacheSnow.com. That's NACHESNOW.com. You can find the show notes for this page and all of the social media links we mentioned in here at NacheSnow.com/43. All right. Happy Black History Month. It just dawned on me like February 1st, I did like the pre-sale of the journal, but February 1st is when it officially went on sale, the Life Cleanse. And I'm like, oh, that's during Black History Month. That's like a little quinky dink. It just made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So if you have not picked up your journal, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, go over to NacheSnow.com/journal and you can learn more about it. Or you can go almost anywhere, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, and just type in the Life Cleanse Journal and you will see it for sale there and can pick it up. So for those of you who have already done it, I really, really appreciate it. Okay. And then also, if you have not subscribed on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever your podcast app of choice is, please do. And please give me a rating. All right, so let's get to our guest, Farissa Knox. She is amazing. I feel like if I don't know folks personally or if people don't give me recommendations, I usually find them on Instagram. And I don't know exactly how I found her. But anyway, like when I started digging into her story, I just thought it was just pretty cool because she actually started her own advertising company, RLM Media. And I mentioned it here too because I had saw in her bio that in 9 years she's been able to gross billings of over 15 million in 9 years. And I was like, whoa, go for Risa. But then also on top of that, she started like a website, What Are You Wearing, which is like a fashion and lifestyle blog. And she, published a book, Love, Sex, and Friendship. And so she also has like 2 children and married. And so I really wanted to talk to her about how she does like all the things and what made her decide to do all the things. And so in this episode, she really breaks down, how she was able to accomplish all of these different businesses and passion projects. And I just think her story is just really inspiring and fascinating. And I think you'll really enjoy it too. So I'm just going to jump right in. Let's get to it. Hello, Farissa. Thanks for coming on to the Studio 78 podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm like really looking forward to getting into your story. Like I saw you on Instagram and I'm like, oh, she seems so interesting. I started looking you up and I'm like, man, she's got like all these companies. She's got like a book out there. She got like a couple of kids. I'm like, how's she doing all this? I got to get her on the podcast.
Yeah, I don't even know the answer to that question myself. So.
Before we even dive into like your different businesses, tell the audience a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I'm originally from New York. I grew up in the Bronx, and my family, like most New Yorkers, like my parents wanted to buy a house and have a yard and all that stuff. So we had to like leave New York to make that a reality. So I spent half probably my ninth grade year moving from the Bronx to Richmond, Virginia, which was a real like culture shock and a crazy year of my life. But I went to college in Virginia, so it was a really great experience to kind of grow up half my life in New York, half my life in a place that kind of represents like how the rest of America really is, because New York is like its own little country. And then really found advertising and marketing in college. I was a communications major, so it was one of those things where I always know what I'm interested in. I never had to try and figure that out. So it was just kind of dabbling around in communications. And once I found advertising, it was a great space for me. I got an internship in school and really never looked back. And I started on the sales side of advertising. So I was selling advertising. I was selling ads basically
Mm.
for TV station in college, and then after school, got a job at a radio station in Virginia and sold ads there for a little bit and realized, okay, I'm in the right space, but I was getting bored, both professionally and personally. I was dating a guy that I was like bored to hell with. So I was like, where is my life going? What am I doing? Um, that was before people were saying like, get your life. But really, I was like, get your life, Farissa. Like, what is going on? So
Right.
I remembered I was from New York and that I was an adult and I could live wherever I wanted to live. And so I started just job searching in New York in my industry and got a job at a rep firm that doesn't exist anymore. They went bankrupt in 2008, but I
Mm.
was selling radio ads for about 2,000 radio stations working at that rep firm. So I got a job in New York, um, lived in Brooklyn, met my now husband. He was from Chicago. So after we dated for a little while, we moved to Chicago together, like really as an adventure. And the company that I worked for in New York, they had a Chicago office, so they transferred me out here.
Oh,
And
cool.
I probably worked for less than a year before the company went bankrupt. And
Ah.
that was really the spark that started my first company, that company going bankrupt. I used my
Mm.
relationships and the knowledge I had gained in the industry to start RLM Media.
So you hear about, the company going bankrupt. Were you able to start like planning this business before like your last day, or was it kind of like after, you left the company, then you said like, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do?" And then is that where the planning began?
Right, right. No, I planned a little bit beforehand because it was basically like a Friday afternoon. The CEO called a national conference call with all the offices across the country, and he was crying on the phone.
Mm.
And I was like, I think it's time for me to figure out
What's going on, right?
that is not a good look. Your CEO is crying on a conference call. So um, that weekend, basically, I was at home and I was talking it over. At that point, we were engaged already with my fiance, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to sit and wait this out and just see what happens. I know that we had a larger competitive company that would probably buy bits and pieces of the firm that I worked at, but I didn't feel like being like collateral damage. And
Mm-hmm.
I was already bored again, so I didn't want to just go find a job. And
Mm-hmm.
my husband just said, like, he asked me one question, and that really was the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. He said, well, what if you just asked a couple of your clients to use you the way that they do now? But instead of you working for that company, you're working for yourself. And, how many of them do you think would say yes?
Mm.
And I was like, oh, well, I'm sure at least a couple of them would say yes. And I asked, I literally sent emails and text messages that weekend. They said, absolutely, we would use you. And I pretty much had the formation like of the company done in that next week and was like preparing paperwork and sending emails to myself. So I had like ways to actually do my job from my living room for, RLM Media. Um,
Mm.
so I quit the company before it went bankrupt so that I wouldn't be doing anything illegal. Like I was working
Mm-hmm.
and talking to clients and asking them if they wanted to come to me instead. But to be able to do that with a good conscience, I quit. And so I let go of any potential severance pay and all that stuff just to take a gamble on myself and see what happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so, so many questions. Okay, so I think sometimes people struggle with like how to start a business up. Like for you, did you just kind of just go for it, or did you like get a CPA and a lawyer and have somebody like work up contracts for you? Like, so what did the beginning of that new business look like for you? How did you
Uh,
structure it?
It was very messy. I'll be honest with you. Compared to today, I mean, RLM will be 10 years old this year. So it's a much, much different company than it was 10 years ago. It was real messy. We had a friend who was a CPA. And so I asked her, like, how do you even go about getting an LLC? I did some research to understand, okay, when you incorporate a company, you have to, get it set up and get the paperwork, get your tax ID number, open up a bank account, all the logistical stuff of it, but wanting to make sure it was at least done properly. Bought her in, and she did it for us for free, I think. I don't remember, but basically, as a friend, she was like, okay, here's the links, send me the information, I'll hook this up. You have to pay the state X amount of dollars, you get your tax ID number, and once you have that, you're a company
You're
and you are
it,
good to
yeah.
go, and you can put your processes and your contracts in place once you get them. But we got our articles of incorporation and in about a week, because it doesn't take long at all. And
Mm-mm.
I was a company. And so then I was like, now what? Uh,
Right.
but, I just reached out. I think in the beginning it was all about just reaching out to people that I thought either could put me in front of someone who was a decision maker to help me make some money, or folks who said, yes, if you do this, we will be clients of yours, and just getting in front of as many people as possible, sending as many emails as possible. This was way before like people and companies cared about social media. So I just needed a website. So then it was like, okay, a website. Who do I
Mm,
know who does that? And just thinking through, who do I know who can help me make this thing as legitimate as I can possibly make it today. And it's a never ending process, to be honest with you, because
yeah.
I'm never not thinking about how can I enhance the way RLM looks and feels and operates to our clients, to the outside world, and now to my employees. Because before it was just me. Now I have 5 employees for that company, and so it's a
Yeah.
never ending process of what can I do that I haven't done before, or what can I do better that we're doing now.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I was reading it on your website, FarissaKnox.com. It says like that you had grown the RLM Media to gross billings of over 15 million in 9 years. And I was like, whoa. So I'm just like a little curious about how, from the moment you kind of left with those couple of clients, like over the years, like how did you continue to like build your brand and bring in more income in order to like support your family?
Yeah. So in the beginning, so yes, I did leave with a couple clients. And so that was a good like push off, where some companies start and you're like, okay, let's go find clients. But I started and I had clients from day one. Now, not all those clients are even still with us, because you grow and you change and things change. But I'm like a fiercely independent woman. So I remember having the conversation with my then fiance that I need to make sure I can pay myself a certain salary. So
Yes.
I can pay my bills, because there's no way in hell I'm going to let like some man take care of me, and he's
Right.
insane, because he's always had a really great job. He's in finance. So there, in his mind, he's like, let's just try this out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I can pay your bills. And in my mind, I'm like, no, that's not
Mm-mm.
an
Yeah.
option for me, because I'm not that type of woman. Now, 10 years later, I would definitely give my 20 something year old self different advice, because I know things better today, but I paid myself like just enough to be able to pay my bills. Because, we were building a life together anyway, and we were getting married, and I knew, like, unlike some entrepreneurs, if my clients pay me late or I'm struggling in the business for a little bit, my husband's not going to let me starve, right? So I had that
Right.
luxury, and I don't take that for granted, and I know everyone doesn't have that. But as I got more comfortable with being a business owner and the sacrifices sometimes that you have to make to grow the company, I actually made the decision to stop paying myself for a while,
Mm.
to invest back into the company. And that was a strategic business and also family decision once we were, married. And I felt comfortable with that because I knew at that point I was comfortable being an entrepreneur. I was comfortable being a CEO, and I knew that I wanted to see how big I could make it. So why
Mm.
pay myself money that we didn't necessarily need as a household that I could reinvest back in the company? But then I started paying myself again because then you realize, okay, Farissa Knox on paper isn't making a salary. So if I want to go make moves personally and get a loan or do some things, then they were looking at me like, well, where do you work? Where's your job?
Right.
Where do I
Right.
work? Where's my job? So there's a lot of decisions that I think people, you don't know what you don't know until you're faced with it. So I was fortunate enough to be young also, with the only responsibility being myself. I didn't have kids yet, so I didn't have to worry about how am I going to pay for diapers and milk and
Mm.
all that stuff. So the luxury of youth and building a life with another person all at the same time afforded me the opportunity to take such a big risk when I did.
And at what point did you say now is the right time to start hiring employees?
Yeah, that was a really tough decision. And I still to this day, when it's time to hire somebody, like labor over it because
Right.
it's like getting married, to be honest. It's like
Yeah.
you should take the decision that seriously. When I made my first hire, I knew that I had to because I was so busy that I had enough work for two people to do. I could do it on my own, but it was a decision on, do I want to be that type of business owner that all the work is me and I can't have a personal life? I can't take a vacation. I can't do anything. And the business will never become bigger than what I personally can handle. Or do I want to
Hmm.
actually grow a company? And to do that, the company has to be bigger than just me. And I have to be okay with what comes with that. And I made a decision early on, probably a good just 6 or 9 months into the company, to say I'm going to hire someone because I want a life. Yes, I love
Right.
business owner and I think I can do this, but I don't want to have it just be me. And
Hmm.
it's more beneficial for the growth of the company because now I can delegate and I can go do other things while other work is getting done by another qualified person.
Yeah, and sometimes, like people will go like the contract freelance route, and then other people bring people on as an employee. So
Mhm.
why did you decide to do one versus the other?
Well, culture is really important to me. I put a lot of stock in just the way that it feels to come to work every day, to work, to like walk into the office that you work in, to socialize and have relationships with your coworkers, and that I really wholeheartedly believe adds to the value of the product that you are able to pump out. If the people that work for you enjoy being in your presence and in the office and surrounded by their coworkers, you're organically going to be giving your clients a much better experience. And somewhere deep inside me, I understood that from the first hire. I actively practice it today, but I knew
Mm,
that instinctively back then. And so it mattered to me that this was a person that I could be with every day and talk to
hmm.
and impart what I already knew onto them and learn from them also. And, have the company speak one language. Like there's an RLM language that I like for folks to use when we're sending emails or when we're on a conference call with a client, that you can't learn if you're a freelancer.
And then at what point too, because I'm assuming, did you end up like at some point renting an office space? And at what point did you, if that's the case, at what point did you feel comfortable doing that? Because that's also another like financial responsibility, right? You already have employees, you already have to pay yourself, and then possibly, paying a lease on a place too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I hired my first hire, that's when I got office space. But there's different levels to office space. You know what I
You're
mean? So,
right.
and plus, again, with the whole culture thing, I wanted us to feel legitimate about going to work every day. It takes a real dedicated, passionate, like focused human being to wake up in your own home in the dead of winter in Chicago and act like you're sitting in an office and get work done. And I didn't want to
Hmm.
have to ask an employee to do the same. So I got like shared office space, through like a Regis or something, and got like the smallest, little teeniest office that I could. And it didn't really add too much to the budget, especially with hiring another person. Then at that point, it was just a couple $100 more. So it was affordable, but it made a huge difference because then you are actually you're commuting somewhere again and you're meeting someone and you're sitting down with coffee and like talking about emails and clients and all that. And I really just have been really strategic and slow over the course of the past 10 years, where we started in a box and then we moved to a little bigger box and then
Right.
we moved to, then I realized, man, I'm just paying for the desk that I'm renting at this shared office space every month. And I've been here for 3 years. I've practically paid for this desk 3 times now. Wait a second.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I can just go buy a desk from like overstock.com for a few $100s and be done with it. So then you get to a point where you start to understand how best to spend the money that your company's making so that it's more cost efficient. And when we got to that point, that's when I got our first real office where we had a lease and it was empty and it was up to us to fill the space.
Oh, wow.
And
That's exciting.
yeah, yeah, that was back in I think 2011 or 10. And so then we hopped around a little bit in that building. And then just in July of last year, we are in a newer space where I got to build it out. Like it was a gut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was empty. And they were like, so how many offices do you want? You want a conference room? And so it was literally, I could draw out the floor plan and then pick everything from ceiling to floor. The cabinets in the kitchen, the handles, like literally everything. So that was a really fun experience.
And what do you like? I mean, that's like amazing going from like leaving a company, not sure what's going to happen to like building out your own space, which I know is kind of the dream for some of like the small business owners out there listening. So, what would you attribute like your success to? Like, was it being really good at marketing, like really good at networking, some other things, a combination of several things? But what what do you think helped you like grow in like a couple of years?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it takes people 3, 4 years to even be able to pay themselves, and maybe they make it through the fifth year. But it sounded like you were able to at least become profitable pretty early on. So yeah, I'm just curious, like how do you think you got there?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a combination of things. There's no one way to be successful in business. I think honestly, the first thing is to reevaluate how you measure success, and this is something that I have to like remind myself of all the time, where there's going to be downtimes, and you have to learn from those downtimes to that when you're in a good space, you have to prepare for the next downturn. Where business feels so good and you have all these clients and you're busy and you're making so much money, you have to at that point start preparing for when all of that is gone. And how do
Mm.
you do that? You start looking for new clients when you're the busiest. You start talking to your bank where you hold all your business accounts and ask them for a line of credit so that you have a few $100,000 sitting to the side for when you don't know how you're going to make payroll. You start to understand how to run a business instead of how to do the thing that your business does. So it's been
Mm,
years since I've actually placed a media buy. I don't do that anymore. RLM does that. My job
mm-hmm.
is to run RLM, to grow RLM, to take RLM into the future that I'm like manufacturing in my head. And like thinking about the future, like where do I want RLM to be 3, 5, 10 years from now, and
Mm,
start working on that plan and figuring out how to make that a reality while you bring really good, talented people on board who can do all the day-to-day work. Because I don't, the only thing that I do for RLM besides run it is focus on new business, bringing in the new
mm.
clients, the new opportunities, and the new partners. And I have a VP. She's my vice president is that first hire that I talked about
Oh,
earlier.
wow. She stayed.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
she's still with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like I know I can trust her to, make sure our media team is being run appropriately and our clients are being serviced and managed happily, and I can go out and basically, preach the RLM gospel to people and then bring in new business and set vision and direction for the future. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's no easy way to say, okay, here's how you become successful. You just
Right.
learn from your mistakes and be willing to just be quick on your feet and maneuver in a way where you're thinking about what's going on today, but more importantly, tomorrow.
And so you're growing, you have like this amazing kind of boutique advertising agency. But then I saw in 2012 you opened up like What Are You Wearing? So can you just tell the listeners a little bit about that and why you decided to start that new business venture?
Yeah, so What Are You Wearing is a digital platform that focuses on content around fashion, style, beauty, lifestyle, and basically anything creative. And I started it, like you said, in 2012, really out of the idea that, okay, I know how to create, develop, and run companies because I've done it with RLM. I'm doing it with RLM. And I had this idea. I just had an idea of why isn't there a space on the internet that allows us to see kind of what everybody, regular everyday people, are wearing every day. I think this was like the height of like fashion blogs and
Mm-hmm.
celebrity blogs, like when they all just kind of took over our lives. And it was great because you could see like we had never been able to see before what someone like Beyonce wore to lunch yesterday with Jay-Z. But I could go online now and actually see that.
Right.
But what about like regular people who don't shop, where Beyonce shops all the time? So that was like the first nugget of what are you wearing? And since then, it's grown because I've created other versions of it that didn't work. The audience didn't do what I thought or hoped they would do. At one point, it became an app, but then Instagram came out and it was like, oh, okay, Instagram literally just like took over and no one's going to post their outfit on What Are You Wearing's app if they post it on Instagram every day. So it
Mm,
was just a matter of my ideas were always great, but they were either late or I couldn't finance it the way that Facebook and Instagram can, finance their ideas. So we started to dabble in content, like actually writing articles and doing things like that. And that's when it started to pick up traction. And I was like, oh, okay, people want to see content. They want to devour content. And that
mm,
was I was a couple, well, I was right on time with it. I wouldn't say I was late or early to the game of, digital content and the creation of it. It's just I was right in that space where everyone was like, oh, let's make a website and just do content. But with my marketing mind, I built the website in mind for advertisers. Just knowing that the way that a website makes money is by advertising dollars. but I don't want it to be this old school weird like banners on the side popping up.
Right.
No one clicks on banners. No, banners are annoying, pop-ups are annoying. So how do we create really amazing high quality content that can just be infused with, sponsored material? And not that we're hiding it or will be hiding it, it's more of it's integrated and it's entertaining so the audience doesn't mind and it works better. So that's really the direction for What Are You Wearing? And we have our buckets now of content that we concentrate on, which is our daily editorial. So every day you can go on What Are You Wearing and see a new article or two that focuses on anything, like I said, in those categories. We have our podcast called Fast Fashion, and it comes out a new episode every Friday. We're in hiatus right now in the middle of season 4 and season 5, but season 5 drops in February. And then in October of last year, What Are You Wearing created and produced our first web series, which was a reality show called PR Girl. And I found this really amazing young lady here in Chicago who's 24 and has her own PR firm, and decided, a ton of our audience, like their number one profession that they're obsessed with is public relations, whether it be fashion
Right.
or. So I was like, why don't I just try and find like the closest young person who's doing PR, who lives, like that Sex in the City lifestyle that a 24-year-old could live in Chicago, and just show her life and show not just like the no salaciousness and nothing like ridiculous like, Basketball Wives or Real
Right.
Housewives, really what she's doing. Like, what is PR? What does a meeting with a client look like? What does a meeting with another publicist look like? What does an event look like pulled together that she worked from beginning to end? And we really were able to capture all of that and show our audience and a newer audience too what that's like. And so we're hoping, and we've gotten great reaction from it, and people are really excited about it, and they're already asking for
Very
season
cool.
2. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So yeah, so I think now that I've gotten the perfect version of What Are You Wearing down now, which is content, 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 it's now we figured that out. Now let's start to monetize it. And so we'll start to partner with some brands and some folks now in 2018.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of curious about that because I think like sometimes for blogs it's like tricky. You almost have to get that audience down packed before you really figure out like the best way to monetize it.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you kind of like found that spot and then now you're about to monetize it. So I think sometimes what people struggle with too is like when you have like this project, be it a passion project or a business you're trying to start up and you know it's going to work, but it might take a year or 2 or 3 before it becomes profitable. Like
Mm-hmm.
how did you, because you're running, your advertising company too, like how did you find like that balance? Because I know maybe at some point you were just like, oh my goodness, this isn't really making money, but I'm still pouring all this time into it. So how did you figure out like how to make it work and like what kind of kept you going?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because there are some days where I'm like, is this a good idea still? uh, Honestly, I think because of the fact that I'm addicted to progress, as long as I have seen progress from What Are You Wearing, I find the energy, the wherewithal, and quite frankly, the money to invest in What Are You Wearing.
Mm,
So there's always been progress. Even if we've done something that didn't work, I can see the progress in that and say, okay, now I know what not to do. So let's try this instead. And then this would work. And then we're like, okay, let's do it this way, or let's do more of that, or, whatever it is. So because there's been progress, and because the folks that I find and have that I have working for me now at What Are You Wearing, half kind of in internship roles, half like part time. because everyone's really young and like either in school or have other jobs, because I want the folks who are making the content to be the audience of What Are You Wearing, so that it's organic content that our audience will care about. They are still super excited about the growth that they've seen in the year that they've been working for me. Because for a while, I would only have like one person plus me on the What Are You Wearing team, and that would be it.
Mm,
Because I wasn't dedicating, everyone, you kind of alluded to this, but like, what's the time split? And really, when I have time, I work on What Are You Wearing, and I can do that because of the strong team that I have on the RLM side. But if there's ever a question of I need to do something like for both companies and it's both like needs to be done now, I always pick RLM first because first of all, RLM is profitable. Second of
right.
all, RLM has actually helped fund What Are You Wearing? So without RLM, there would be no What Are You Wearing? And I need to, be there for our clients and RLM more than What Are You Wearing needs me. So the role that I play for What Are You Wearing obviously is the CEO position and, kind of last set of eyeballs on everything. And I'm the creator of PR Girl and came up with the idea for our podcast. But I get to flex my creative muscle on the What Are You Wearing side, which is really, really fun for me. And it's an outlet that I can pour my creative self into while building a company that will, be profitable.
Right.
I'm predicting by the end of 2018.
Oh, no, that's amazing. And then too, I'm just curious because of course, video is huge, right? Like this is like rise of the video.
Mhm.
And so I think, even like PR Girl is like great because in the era of Netflix and then vlogs on YouTube or whatever, people just love following other people and like you said, like
Yeah,
that Sex in the Style kind of thing, but more reality a little bit, but yours is like more professional reality. It's not like,
right,
some of the other shows you mentioned. But I'm
exactly.
just curious for the like so I know there are some people out there who probably want to get into more video, be it like a vlog style or something more like kind of like an episode, like a Netflix episode. Did you decide to like hire like a film crew to help you with it, or did you guys get like a little scrappy and do, maybe just your own DSLR or iPhone? I'm just curious like how you decided to go about producing PR Girl.
No, I definitely went the route of finding a production company and a small one that I knew was really good and really had experience shooting reality footage, and I knew that I had a good working relationship with. Because
Mm,
one thing I know about today's content consumer is that quality of the content, if that's not there, it doesn't matter how awesome Alex, who's the star of season one, PR Girl, how awesome her life is or how good at her job she is. If the quality of the show was crap, then we wouldn't
right.
have had an audience, So, and wouldn't have an opportunity to show it to folks who matter, potential sponsors, to say, look at season one, look at what we did. And that was with just investment dollars from my pocket. Now, if we have sponsors, imagine what we can do with season two. So I really love to focus, even though it's harder and it's a harder road, but focusing on the quality of the content is first and foremost for me, because without that, you don't have a sticky audience and you don't get a second chance. There's so much content out
Right.
there that why spend more than literally 2 seconds watching your video when there's a million other things that I could watch right now.
And then before we wrap up, I just wanted to touch on one more of your projects, which is the book. So I'm not sure, like, at what point you decided to or had time to
Right.
write a book, but it's called love, sex, and friendship, in no particular order. So what made you decide to like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna write a book. and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then and when did you do it? Yeah.
Yes. So it's so funny. So I started that book years and years and years ago. The year that I moved to Chicago from New York was 2007. Yes, 2007. I was, transferring over and trying to figure out like what's my life going to be like in Chicago. And I remember one of my last few days in New York, I was hanging out with a group of friends, my best friend and some other folks, and I was just telling a story and we were drinking some cocktails and they were like, "You tell the best stories. You should write all this shit down." And I was like, "What? I don't have who has time to write a book? Like that doesn't make any sense." And I remember when I moved to Chicago, it was February of 2007 and I was freezing and I didn't know anyone. It took my husband a little while longer to transfer over from New York to Chicago. So I basically lived by myself in a city that I knew no one for about 3 or 4 months.
Mm.
And I would come home after work and just write because it was almost like a dare. My friends know me well enough to know that if an idea feels good to me, I'm going to like kind of take that personal challenge like an insane person and do it. And then once I started, I couldn't stop because it was therapeutic, it was fun, and I was laughing while I was doing it. So I did that, put it to the side, didn't even think about it for years, practically and almost really did forget about it until a few years later. I was back in New York for Fashion Week. I had started What Are You Wearing at this point. We were at Fashion Week trying to just drum up, numbers and people and network. And I was in a hotel room in New York with the same group of friends, drinking champagne out of like a paper cup and telling a story. And my best friend goes, "Remember that book you wrote?" And I was like, "Oh my God, right. Where is that thing?" And my husband, weirdly enough, he had like a printed, like on paper, like not even a bound real book. It was just like printed out from a printer.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yes, the copy, like in our closet somewhere at our house. And I hadn't seen it or thought about that in about 5 years at that point. Read it, laughed hysterically and was like, wow, okay. I could see I was a better writer at that point. So I could see the holes and where I needed more character development and all this stuff. So I just started to do that because it was fun. And I have always loved to write. And again, I'm creative. So I need something to always kind of pour that into. And I thought, well, we're building What Are You Wearing right now? And one day I might have an audience of, 20 somethings who care about my life when I was 20 something.
Mm.
So let me just try this and see what happens. And I remember trying like to finish it was hard because I was running out of time every day. It's like I'm running two companies. I think I had my first daughter by that point, and so I decided to book a hotel room in Chicago and lock myself in it for the weekend and just
Mm.
get it done. And I did, and it felt so good. And I pitched it to some publishers. No one bid at it. And I was like, well, forget all them. I'm going to self-publish. Amazon is real, and I can just put it out there and just see what happens. And that's what I did. And it was sort of like a labor of love for me. It's definitely not like the way that I pay my bills or anything. It's just like, here's a little creative piece of me for whoever cares to read it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically a good little snapshot of my 20s, like living in New York, working, getting started in advertising, meeting my husband, dating him, and that roller coaster of how you go from we just met, we're boyfriend and girlfriend, do we love each other, are we breaking up, are we staying together, to
Right.
moving in together, that whole thing. And then my best friend, and going through a little bit of what she went through with her boyfriend at the time, who's also now her husband. So, and really like the relationship between the two of us, which I think all best friends, like real best friends, can relate to, because when you find that person, especially when, as a woman, who you can just tell everything to, there's zero judgment, and you just feel so comfortable, like she's your sister, it's a really cool relationship. So it's like an easy read. It's like you pick it up and, in a day you're done. And yeah, so I
Oh, very
self-published.
cool.
That was how I found the time. I kind of had to once I started.
Yeah, and then I'm just, curious too, because you have two children total, correct?
Yes.
So a lot of times, like I'll talk to like people who want to kind of venture into entrepreneurship, and they're like, "Oh, like I have kids, I just can't do it, Nache. Like it's different for you. You don't have any kids." And I'm like, and I keep telling them, I'm like, "No, no, no, you guys don't understand. I know like tons of amazing women who have multiple children who are able to make their dreams come true." So, do you have like any kind of like advice to women out there who think like, I just can't do this or I don't have time for this because I have a family.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a huge believer. Like I could get really like cosmic on you right now, but I'm a huge believer in you put out into the universe what you really want to have happen. So if you say repeatedly over and over again, I do not have time to do XYZ, then you really won't have time to do it. But if it matters to you and you say, I want to do XYZ, you will find the time. Will it be easy? No. Will it be like a walk on the beach? No. But if it's something that really, really matters to you, that you won't feel fulfilled unless you do it, then you find the time to do it. And for me, like my to-do list on any given day is a combination of like the multiple versions of who I am as one person. So I might have to online grocery shop, buy my 5-year-old daughter a pair of jeans, fill out an NDA agreement with a new client that I'm gonna go meet with, update the website. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
a true combination of mom, wife, business owner times two, and anything else going on in my life. And that's how you make time. We're women. We just multitask and we diversify our brains to fit in the things that we want to do. And for me, quite honestly, it's like we only get one life to live. And so if I have all of these things inside me that are creative, or the legacy that I want to leave behind for my daughters, for Black women, for like women in general, I have to do all these things that come to me, because that's the only way that I know how to like be written down in a history book one day. I need to make history. So
Right.
I can't just
Yeah.
be a normal person. That's not how you end up a history maker.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, folks, you heard that. So, just a couple of wrap up questions. The first one is, have you discovered your passion? And if so, what is it?
Yes, I believe I have. Check back with me when I'm like 50. But
Right.
I honestly, it's just being creative. If I have the opportunity to be creative, whether that's writing or making content with my team, or even trying to figure out like strategy around building the businesses, for me, if I'm being creative and learning something new or creating something new, that is where I find my energy and my passion. So I count myself very, very blessed and lucky to be able to wake up and do that every day.
What is one thing that you can't live without? It could be anything, tech, food, makeup, like anything in the world.
So cliche, but honestly, coffee and wine. Like if
Ah.
I don't have both of those like every day, I don't even know who that person is.
Right? You're like, you're not functional. You can't
No,
function.
no, no.
And also, please let the listeners know where they can find you, like the best website and any social media handles you'd like to share.
Yeah. So FarissaKnox.com is where I send everyone just to get started. And from there, I have links to RLM Media, so you can check out the ad agency. I have links to What Are You Wearing, so you can check that platform out. And from What Are You Wearing, you can check out PR Girl, the reality show. You can also link to my book from FarissaKnox.com. So go to FarissaKnox.com, and on social, I'm Farissa Knox everywhere. So at Farissa Knox.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yes.
lots of good stuff in here. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, thanks for having me. You're awesome.
Hey, folks, wasn't that great? Ignore my voice in the intro and outro. I woke up randomly with a sore throat this morning. Usually I like the winter, but I think I'm ready for it to be over. Anyway, wasn't this a great episode? I mean, her tips for business, like about reevaluating how you measure success and learning from your downturns, right? Looking for clients when you're the busiest, or getting a line of credit from your bank before you need it, because probably once you get to the point you need it, they're not going to loan it to you, and learning from your mistakes. She talked about being quick on your feet, and then also maneuvering in a way where you're thinking about what's going on today, but more importantly, tomorrow. I think those were very great tips for running a successful business. And then the last thing I'll just touch on a little bit is, I think it's important for me, because since I'm always talking to people about side hustles and being an entrepreneur, but I'm married with no children, and sometimes I really do get folks that say like, Nache, it's so different. So it's really important for me to get like a smattering of folks on the podcast that really showcase, like, it doesn't matter what your circumstances is. You're single, married with no kids, married no kids dog, married with kids, or not married with child or children. Like, if you want to do something, it doesn't matter like how big your family is, you can do it. And so I like what she says about putting out in the universe what you really want to happen, because when you do that, it will happen. And it's a little woo woo, but I love the woo woo. Y'all know I love woo woo. So I do feel that that can happen too. So I'm glad that she also kind of delivered that message. So I'd love to hear what you think. You know where to find me, social media everywhere. Comment on the episode notes, on the website, nashesno.com/43. Let us know what you think. All right, I'm going to get us out of here. I know this was longer than usual, but I wanted to keep all the things in. If you haven't already, remember to pick up a copy of the journal. Just head over to my website, and please subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating. The ratings, the 5-star ratings in particular, really help me get discovered. And thanks to everyone already who has supported the podcast and the business. I really appreciate it. Again, happy Black History Month, and see you guys next week.